All right, let's get into this. We're talking about a man named Silas Thorne, a powerful guy from a place called Cypress Hollow. He thought he could bury a secret, literally, just bury it in the mud and forget about it. Well, he was dead wrong, because what he never saw coming was that justice was on its way with every single breath he took. And this quote, wow, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? We're not talking about some courtroom drama with a judge and a jury. No, this is something else entirely. This is about a revenge that was slow, methodical, and honestly, absolutely chilling. So to really understand what's going on here, we have to rewind. We're going back 10 years, because that's where it all started, a single moment of just brutal, casual cruelty. And that one act, it planted a seed of revenge that would take an entire decade to finally bloom. Okay, so let's meet the main players in this story. You've got two central figures. On one side, there's Silas Thorne. He's 48, the master of this whole plantation, Cypress Hollow. He's arrogant, cruel, and completely obsessed with his own health and wealth. And then there's Ara. She's 26, the lead chambermaid. To him, she's practically invisible, a ghost. But she is the sister of the woman he murdered. And she has been playing the long game, just waiting for this exact moment. And when I say she was patient, I mean incredibly patient. Think about it. 10 years ago, her sister, Sarah, was killed. For what? For dropping a piece of glass. For the next 10 years, Ara disappears, becomes this expert seamstress, and just waits. She waits for Silas to completely forget her face, to forget Sarah even had a sister. And now, well, she's back in the house. And, what a coincidence, Silas's health is suddenly, mysteriously, failing. And this is where we get to the real heart of the plan. The absolutely brilliant and terrifying way Aurora gets her revenge. It's not a revenge crafted with a knife or with poison. No, it was crafted with the simple tools of her trade. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Silas is a man of brute force, a man who rules with a whip. He'd expect someone to come at him with a hammer, with violence. He would never, ever suspect that his own downfall was being carefully sewn into the very fabric of his comfort. So how'd she do it? It was a clinical process, really. Every single week, she'd collect Silas's fancy heavy silk pillowcases. Then, in total secrecy, she would painstakingly unpick the inner seams and sew in a fine powder of crushed industrial glass right into the fibers. Then she just returned them to his bed. They were transformed into these silent, lethal weapons. The weapon she chose was just horrifyingly simple. Industrial glass ground down to a powder so fine it was practically invisible. Every time Silas laid his head down to sleep, every time he tossed and turned, this microscopic cloud of glass dust would rise up. He'd breathe it in. And once those tiny shards were in his lungs, they weren't coming out. They just stayed there, embedding themselves, making thousands of tiny cuts, scarring, and slowly turning his lungs into a massive internal bleeding. Now, while this slow internal execution is happening, things on the outside are starting to heat up. Silas isn't just fighting for his next breath anymore. He's fighting to hold on to his entire empire. And this is when everything starts to come together. His health is collapsing, which is making him violently paranoid. At the same time, this cold, calculating judge named Sterling shows up to investigate his crooked finances. And to top it all off, a young stable boy, little Joe, the only person who actually saw the murder, is starting to feel the pressure to talk. The noose is definitely tightening from all sides. So as his body is betraying him, Silas just lashes out at everyone. He's convinced he's being poisoned. He accuses the cook, Marta, of putting something in his food, even strikes her in a fit of rage. He orders the slave quarters to be completely torn apart, looking for any sign of a physical enemy, a bottle of arsenic, anything. He's looking for something he can fight, something he can whip, totally oblivious to the real threat. Judge Sterling, he adds a whole new layer of pressure. See, he isn't there about a murder. He's there about money. He's found proof that Silas is a fraud and a thief. But while he's investigating, he can't help but notice that the master of the house looks awful, like a man who's literally being consumed from the inside out. In all of this, it leads right to the climax. A massive, violent storm rolls into Cypress Hollow. And as the sky opens up, so does the ground, revealing the one secret Silas thought was buried for good. This storm isn't just bad weather. You could almost say it feels like fate. It turns the entire plantation into a swamp, softening up the earth, creating this atmosphere of pure chaos that's just perfect for digging up old sins. So under this incredible downpour, the old smokehouse, a building that was already rotted and falling apart, It finally just gives way and collapses. And this wasn't just any old building. This was the tomb that Silas had chosen for his victim 10 years ago. And right there, in all the mud and the rain, the proof of his 10-year-old crime is finally exposed. Little Joe, the stable boy, he sees it first. The skeleton of Ara's sister, Sarah, finally brought back into the light. So while all this chaos is happening outside, Silas is trapped in his room, getting weaker and weaker. He collapses against his bed, and in his desperation, his hands just rip at the silk pillowcase. A little cloud of fine, glittering dust poofs out into the lamplight. And in that one instant, he gets it. He finally understands. He wasn't cursed. He wasn't sick. He was being executed. And that was the beautiful, terrible poetry of it all. Ara hadn't just killed him. She turned his own sin back on him. The very material he used to kill her sister, broken crystal glass, had become the very air he was breathing. So, what happens next? What's the aftermath? Well, with the secret out and Silas on his deathbed, the final pieces of this whole story just fall right into place, destroying not just the man, but his entire legacy. Judge Sterling, the man of the law, he comes into the room. He sees the body outside in the mud, and he sees the glittering dust inside. He puts it all together, and in this really stunning move, he makes a choice. He declares that Silas will simply die of natural causes. Then he orders the room and all the evidence of Amara's revenge to be burned. And so, here's how it all wraps up. Silas dies, his corrupt empire is exposed and taken apart by his brother Julian. Judge Sterling makes sure the financial crimes are punished. Little Joe gets sent away to the city to start a new, safe life. And Ara? She's handed her freedom papers, a quiet payment for the service she performed. But before she leaves for good, Ara does one last thing. This incredibly symbolic act. She takes out her sister Sarah's old silver thimble, the very tool she used to sew the glass into those pillows, and she places it right there, on the pillow, next to the dying man. It was her signature, really, the final punctuation on a decade of waiting. And that leaves us with the big question of this whole story, right? Ara got this perfect, poetic revenge for a horrible crime that the law never would have touched. But in doing that, did she actually deliver justice? Or did she just become a murderer herself? You know, that's a question with no easy answer.